You are the lifeblood of the party. I can't do what I do without the people in this room, and I want to thank you for that. You are the ones that know your neighbors and friends, get your friends to vote in your county. You recruit candidates, get them to step up, you talk to your friends, and tell them to get out and vote on election day. And we can't do any of that, and I can't be successful without all of you, so thank you. I want to talk to you a little bit about 2018 and then talk about 2020. Natasha talked about it earlier. We swept our statewide races in 2018, retained our House and Senate majorities in the State House. We had a fantastic night on election night, in large part because the Ohio Republican Party made over 5 million voter contacts last year. That's phone calls and door knocks. And that's what we did to get out the vote. It was an unprecedented turnout election in 2018, the highest voter turnout for any gubernatorial election in the state of Ohio. And Governor DeWine won 79 out of the 88 counties. It was a fantastic night. Thank you to everyone who helped. Like I said, we swept our statewide races with Frank LaRose, our Secretary of State, Keith Faber, our auditor, Robert Sprague, our treasurer, Dave Yost, our attorney general. And they are all doing such a fantastic job. You know, Governor DeWine and John Husted were off to the races, appointing the most diverse cabinet in Ohio's history. They're fighting every day for their pro-business, pro-Ohio agenda, making sure that Ohio works for every corner of the state, focusing a lot, in large part, on the children of this state, and taking common sense reforms to make sure everyone feels safe and protected in this state. I will be candid with you, however, in 2018, we fell short in 2 big races. And my message to all of you is we cannot fall short again. We lost 2 Ohio Supreme Court races. And at the time we had a 7-0 majority. People were, probably engaged in other statewide races. There was a lot of competition for dollars and attention. But as you all know, there's no party affiliation next to a judge's name at the ballot box. And Mary DeGennaro and Craig Baldwin ran incredible races. We just didn't pull them across the finish line. So my message to all of you is that know your judges. Make sure you take the time to find out who's the Republican judge on the ballot, whether it's a municipal court judge, common pleas judge, court of appeals judge, or the Supreme Court. So let's turn to 2020. As we turn to judges in 2020, our statewide races in 2020 will be Sharon Kennedy and Judy French have to be reelected. I have a friend who told me, just tell everyone to remember KFC, Kennedy French for the court. All of you remember it. They have to be reelected, and I'll tell you why. The balance of the Ohio Supreme Court is at stake. And I know some of you are lawyers who practice law, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, when we had a very activist Ohio Supreme Court. The state legislature would pass tort reform, medical malpractice reform. They would pass good laws that made pro-business sense, that was going to in mind to move Ohio in the right direction. But the activist judges, they called themselves, well, others called them the Gang of Four. They would overturn anything the legislature did, implement their own rules and laws. They gave us intentional torts. Every time the workers' compensation system, the school funding system was passed by the State House, that Supreme Court would overturn it. We cannot go back to those days. I know as conservatives, we all believe in judicial restraint, that a judge is supposed to interpret the laws and constitutions as the written document and not to create laws and legislate from the bench. But let me tell you something else. One of the reasons why those races are so important, do you know, excuse me, that Eric Holder, does anybody know who Eric Holder is in this room? Oh yeah. Guess what? Sorry, thanks. Eric Holder has a national target on the Ohio Supreme Court races. He has a target to flip Sharon Kennedy and Judy French. You wonder why? Think, why would that be? The real reason is, in 2020, we will have our census, and we'll be redrawing our congressional districts for 2022. And now that the U.S. Supreme Court has decided that gerrymandering and redistricting is not a U.S. Supreme Court issue, it's a question of it's a political question, they said it's up to the states. So all the states across this country are going to decide whether the laws drawn by some of our bipartisan redistricting commission are up to snuff. And I don't know if some of you saw what happened last year in Pennsylvania, but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned the congressional districts in Pennsylvania, and I think the Democrats picked up 5 congressional seats. That's exactly what Eric Holder wants to do here in Ohio. He wants to have control of the Ohio Supreme Court so that they can sue and have that court redraw our congressional districts so that they can pick up seats here in Ohio. And you know what that means? That means Nancy Pelosi gets to be Speaker for a very, very long time, because the Democrats will pick up so many seats if they do that in states all across the country. That's why those races are really important. So don't forget Sharon Kennedy and Judy French. Are you all going to make sure they get reelected next year? Yes. So that's my spiel on the judges. I'm passionate about it. I think you know I'm a lawyer, and I think it's really important. How many of you watched the debates last night? Did you watch all 3 hours? I was down in Gallia County. I had to listen. Well, I was doing radio and TV all day yesterday, and it was a zoo out in Westerville. Had to go out there. The Democrats and the media descended here in Ohio. Listened to it in the car back, and then watched it at home. Because I had to do radio all day today. That's probably why my voice is going. But boy, what a circus! What a circus! I was astounded. Do you think anything they said on that debate stage resonates with the average Ohioan? I don't. I mean, maybe some progressive that live in Franklin County, in Cleveland, in Cincinnati, in Dayton, in Toledo. But what were they really talking about? They were talking about raising your taxes. They were talking about socialism. They were talking about Medicare for all, which means the government takeover of your health care. Do you know there are 6.4 million people in the state of Ohio who get their health care through their employer or have private insurance? If Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and the rest of them get their way, those 6.4 million people in this state alone will no longer get to decide who their doctor is, where their children, who's their pediatrician, what kind of services they get. It's all going to be decided by folks in Washington. Let me tell you, that's exactly what they want to do. It, to me, is frightening. That's not going to resonate with us in the rest of Ohio. And as I said earlier today when I was talking on the radio, it may sound good in Boston and Berkeley, but it doesn't fly in Ohio. Socialism does not sell in Ohio. They're talking about gun confiscation. There's a big debate about guns in this country. We're going to have a big debate here in Ohio. But let me tell you, it is a constitutional right. And I know the governor's proposal, in my mind, I'm a lawyer, he's tried really hard to make sure there's a big due process aspect of having good, strong gun reform. Let's see what else they talked about. Packing the Supreme Court. They want to do things, they want to change the rules so they can fundamentally change this country. Fundamentally change this country. And do you know what I saw? One of the first things they started talking about in these debates last night, they started saying lies about Ohio. They said, oh, they're losing jobs in Ohio. Things are terrible in Ohio. manufacturing is gone, and no one has a job in Ohio. Well, let's talk about the reality. Our unemployment rate here in Ohio at the worst time under Obama was 11.1%. It's now 4.1%. Wages have gone up 3%. The average Ohioan, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, has $1,400 more in their pocket. That means so much. Do you know that under President Trump, 6.5 million jobs have been created across this country? And it's because of policies like lower taxes, less regulation, pro-business policies, common sense reforms. All of that's going to go away. Elizabeth Warren wants to fundamentally change our business structure. She wants to ensure that unions, all sorts of folks get to sit on the boards of corporations and direct how they operate. That's not how this country runs. She claims to be a capitalist, but it's really socialism.